The crash in the night was quiet in the small colony at the edge of the alien forest. A cool wind moved through the trees, carrying the smell of rain. Most people slept in their cabins, dreaming of old Earth and the safe cities far away. But Ethan never slept easy, not after what happened last year. He always took the late patrol, walking the fences, watching the shadows. Trouble always came when you least expected it. Tonight, trouble came as a thunderous roar in the sky. A burning streak ripped through the clouds, falling fast. Ethan stared up, mouth open. The object crashed beyond the eastern fence with a loud, shaking boom. The ground trembled. Lights flickered in the cabins, and distant dogs barked in fear. Ethan's hand went to his rifle. He ran toward the noise, heart pounding, even as the alarm siren wailed. People started waking up. Faces appeared at windows, frightened and curious. Ethan ignored them. He reached the fence gate and unlatched. It's slipping outside before anyone could stop him. The forest outside was thick and dark, full of strange sounds. Leaves brushed his arms, and wet branches slapped his face as he ran. He heard the distant alarm getting softer behind him. All he could see was the orange glow lighting the trees ahead. Ethan stopped at the edge of a clearing. Smoke rose in twisting, clouds glowing in the moonlight. At the center, something had crashed into the earth metal, twisted and scorched, sparks flying. A small ship, no bigger than a truck, lay broken and steaming. The door was half open, hanging off its hinges. There was a shape inside, moving slowly, coughing in the smoke. He stepped closer, his boots crunching on burnt leaves. "Hello," Ethan called out, voice steady but low. He raised his rifle just in case. The shape inside the wreck froze. Then, weakly, a hand reached out small, with fingers too long to be human. The skin glowing pale blue. Ethan's breath caught. It was an alien. A girl, maybe 10 or 11, thin and fragile, with silver hair tangled around her face. Her clothes were torn, stained with blood and smoke. She stared at him with wide, terrified eyes that reflected the firelight. He saw tears. On her cheeks, "Help," she whispered. The words shaky but clear, Ethan dropped to one knee, lowering his weapon. "I'm here," he said quietly. "I won't hurt you." He pulled off his jacket, waving away the smoke. The alien girl tried to crawl out, but her leg was trapped under a metal bar. She winced in pain, her small body shaking behind Ethan. He heard voices, other patrolmen running through the woods. The colony's rules were clear. Any alien found near the base had to be reported, captured, and sent away. No one trusted outsiders here. But Ethan looked at the girl, saw the fear in her eyes. And something inside him shifted. "Hold on," he said, his voice gentle. He gripped the hot metal bar and lifted with all his strength. The bar groaned, then moved enough for her to pull, her leg free. She cried out softly but didn't scream. The other patrolmen were close now. Ethan could hear them calling his name, searching for the crash. He knew if they found her, they would take her away, maybe hurt her. He couldn't let that happen. Ethan looked at the girl. "Can you walk?" he asked in a whisper. She nodded, though her face twisted with pain. Ethan helped her up, putting her arm around his shoulders. Her body was light and cold, shaking with every step. Together, they slipped away from the clearing, deeper into the forest, moving just before the patrolman burst through the trees. "Over here," one of them shouted, finding the wreck. Ethan's heart raced as he hid behind a thick tree, holding the alien girl close. They were so close he could hear their boots, smell the sweat and smoke. One wrong move, and both of them would be finished. As the patrolman searched the crash site, Ethan took a slow breath. He glanced at the girl. Her eyes were full of fear. But she trusted him, even though he was a stranger. He squeezed her hand gently. "We'll be safe," he whispered. "I promise." The patrolman moved on, heading back toward the colony. The sirens faded. Ethan carried the girl away, making sure to leave no tracks. He didn't know what would happen next. He only knew one thing: he had just broken the colony's biggest rule. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt alive. But danger was everywhere. And the night was far from over. The secret shelter. The night was still dark when Ethan reached the back of his cabin. The alien girl leaning on his shoulder. Her steps were weak, every breath shallow. He checked over his shoulder. Again and again. Sure, someone had followed, but the woods behind were empty. Silent, except for the quiet chirping of alien bugs. He had no idea what to do next, only that the girl would not survive outside much longer. He slipped inside through the old kitchen door, careful not to make a sound. His small home was cold and empty, walls made of thin metal and old wood. The windows rattled when the wind blew, and the lights flickered whenever the power grid was weak. Tonight, everything felt sharper and more dangerous than before. Ethan led the girl to the back, past boxes and broken chairs, to a dusty storage shed attached behind his cabin. Hardly anyone came out here, and the locks barely worked. Inside, the air smelled of old oil and forgotten tools. He helped her sit on a pile of faded blankets. She shivered and pulled her knees up to her chest. Ethan locked the door and knelt beside her. In the dim light, he saw her wounds, better cuts on her arms, dirt on her face, and a deep bruise on her ankle. He brought a first aid kit, his hands shaking as he cleaned the cuts. She winced but made no sound. "I need to call a doctor," Ethan said softly, but the girl shook her head, eyes wide with panic. She didn't want help from anyone else. He took a breath and tried to speak slowly, hoping she understood. "You're safe here," he said. "No one will find you." The girl blinked, then nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. Ethan grabbed an old shirt and wrapped her foot. He wanted to ask her name, but didn't know how. Instead, he handed her a piece of bread and a bottle of water. She sniffed the food, then took tiny bites, still watching him like a wild animal. Suddenly, there was a loud knock at the main door. Ethan's heart leaped in his chest. He jumped up, telling the girl to stay quiet. He crept back through the house and opened the door. Just a crack. It was his neighbor Carl, with a worried look. "You hear that crash?" Carl asked, eyes darting past Ethan's shoulder. "Patrol is searching the woods. He thinks something dangerous came down." "You okay?" Ethan forced a yawn. "I was asleep," he lied. "Didn't hear much." "Everything all right out there?" Carl nodded, but his gaze lingered. "Strange times. You let me know if you see anything." "Yeah, I will." "Good night, Carl." Ethan closed the door quickly, pressing his back against it. For a long moment, he listened to Carl's footsteps fade. He was shaking. He had never lied to Carl before. Back in the shed, the girl had fallen asleep, curled on the blankets, arms hugging her knees. Her face looked soft in sleep, not scary at all, just tired and lonely. Ethan watched her, feeling a strange sense of responsibility mixed with fear. He had no plan, but leaving her outside would be a death sentence. As dawn began to lighten the sky, Ethan moved around his tiny kitchen, making tea. He searched for answers, but found only more questions. Why had she crashed here? Was anyone looking for her? Would the patrol find out he was hiding her? When the girl woke, sunlight was coming through the small window. She sat up, flinching when she moved her foot. Ethan gave her tea in a cracked mug. She took it, cradling it in her hands. For a long time, they sat in silence. Ethan found a pencil and a piece of paper. He drew a simple picture, a stick figure pointing at himself. "It's Ethan," he said, tapping his chest. He held the pencil out to her. She hesitated, then took the pencil with her long fingers. She drew a small shape with wings, then a bigger one, then a third. She pointed to the smallest. "Lyra," she whispered, voice barely above a breath. Ethan nodded. "Lyra?" He pointed to the other shapes, but Lyra only looked away, tears in her eyes. He understood she had lost someone in the crash. A sudden noise outside made them both jump. Patrolmen's voices echoed down the path, closer than before. Ethan's hands shook as he hid the first aid kit and food. He pressed a finger to his lips and guided Lyra behind a stack of boxes. She crouched, barely breathing. Heavy boots stomped outside. Someone rattled the shed door. Ethan's heart stopped. The lock barely held. He waited, every muscle tense, as the voices argued and then faded away. The patrol had moved on. For now, Ethan exhaled, sweat on his forehead. He knelt beside Lyra again, whispering, "We have to be careful." Lyra nodded, pressing her hands together as if in prayer. Ethan stared at the shed's small window. He had broken the colony's rules, and now his life was tied to a frightened alien girl named Lyra. If anyone found out, everything would change. But for now, she was safe. And so was he, at least for one more day. The broken wings, the morning sun shone through cracks in the shed's wooden walls, turning dust into gold in the quiet air. Lyra sat with her knees pulled to her chest, watching the light move across the floor. She still didn't speak much. But Ethan could see her eyes were clearer now. He checked her bandages, brought her food, and sometimes just sat nearby so she wouldn't feel alone. As Ethan made breakfast, he heard a soft rustle behind him. He turned and found Lyra holding a folded piece of cloth. She hesitated, glancing at the locked door, then at Ethan, as if asking if it was safe. Slowly, she unwrapped the cloth and showed him what was inside. Ethan's eyes widened. There, hidden beneath her torn shirt, were wings, delicate, silvery, and clearly not made for this world. But they were bent at strange angles, feathers dirty and broken, with deep red wounds where they joined her back. Ethan forgot to breathe for a second. He understood now why she was so scared, so careful to hide herself. He knelt beside her, speaking softly. "Your wings, they're hurt badly," he said, trying not to sound afraid himself. Do you need help?" Lyra nodded, biting her lip. Her eyes begged for help, but also showed shame. She tried to explain with gestures, pointing to her wings and then to Ethan's old toolkit on a shelf. Ethan understood. She needed something to fix them, something not from her world. Ethan studied the wounds, careful not to hurt her. He found splinters and dried blood. He cleaned the wounds gently, then used pieces of thin wood and medical tape to make a rough splint. Lyra didn't cry or make a sound. She just squeezed her eyes shut and waited for it to be over. When Ethan finished, she gave a weak smile, her first since the crash. Suddenly, a loud knock sounded at the main house door. Ethan froze. He left Lyra in the shed and hurried to answer, wiping his hands clean. On the porch stood Dr. Hargrove, the colony's only real doctor. His sharp eyes scanned Ethan's face. "We're checking for injuries after last night," Hargrove said, his voice cold. "Anyone come to you for help? Anyone strange around?" Ethan shook his head, hiding his fear. "Oh, sir, just me." The doctor glanced past Ethan, frowning. "Your lights were on all night. Something keeping you awake." Ethan forced a laugh. "Couldn't sleep. That crash scared me." "Didn't see anything, though." Hargrove grunted. "If you hear or see anything, report it." His tone was hard. "No secrets, Ethan." "I promise," Ethan lied, closing the door after the doctor left. He returned to the shed, finding Lyra hiding behind boxes. He knelt, voice shaking. "They're looking for you," he whispered. "You can't make any noise, okay?" Lyra nodded, her face pale with worry. Later, Ethan searched his home for anything useful: wires, soft cloth, and pain medicine from his emergency kit. He tried to repair her wings as best as he could, but nothing seemed right. Lyra winced as he worked but never complained. That night, as Lyra dozed in her corner, Ethan sat at the old kitchen table, drawing in his notebook. He tried to sketch what he saw: Lyra's wings, her injuries, and strange symbols she had drawn for him on paper. If only he could understand her language, maybe he could help her more. He remembered an old science manual in the colony's lab, filled with pictures of different creatures and anatomy charts. Maybe, just maybe, it could help him fix Lyra's wings, but the lab was guarded at night, and Dr. Hargrove hated anyone touching his things. Ethan knew if he got caught, he'd be thrown out of the colony or worse. Still, he couldn't let Lyra suffer. He made up his mind. He would sneak into the lab after dark. He waited until the colony's lights were out and most people slept. He told Lyra to stay hidden and left quietly, his heart pounding. The lab was only 2 streets away, but every shadow felt dangerous. He slipped behind the main building, pried open a loose window, and climbed inside. The room was cold and full of strange smells. Ethan found the manual quickly, flipping through pages until he spotted diagrams of wings, bird wings, insect wings, and even old reports about alien biology from past scouts. He tore out the pages he needed and stuffed them in his jacket. Suddenly, he heard footsteps in the hall. Ethan hid behind a cabinet as a security guard entered, flashlight sweeping across the room. Ethan held his breath, clutching the papers. The guard paused, then moved on. Ethan waited, heart racing, then slipped out the window and hurried home. Back in the shed, Lyra was waiting, her eyes wide with fear and hope. Ethan sat beside her, showing her the pages. She recognized one and pointed, whispering something in her language. Together, they studied the drawings, trying to figure out how to fix her wings. For the first time, Ethan saw real hope in Lyra's eyes. But outside, the colony was waking up. The hunt for the missing alien was only growing stronger. Ethan knew every hour brought more danger, but he also knew he would do anything to help Lyra, matter the risk. The betrayal of the sun was high above the colony, and the air buzzed with tension. Ethan had barely slept. All morning, patrols moved in and out of the woods. Radios crackled with messages about the alien ship, missing tools, and strange footprints. Even inside his small cabin, Ethan felt like he was being watched, but he kept his routine: making breakfast, checking the fences, acting normal. No one could know his secret. In the shed, Lyra's wounds were healing slowly. Her wings looked straighter now, thanks to the splints and bandages. She still flinched at every sound, but she smiled more, sometimes drawing pictures for Ethan or humming soft alien tunes under her breath. Ethan smiled back, but worry was always in his eyes. One afternoon, as Ethan cleaned the kitchen, there was a sudden, sharp knock on the door. His heart jumped. He wiped his hands and opened the door, expecting Carl or maybe Dr. Hargrove. Instead, it was Jonah, a patrolman, and Ethan's old friend. Jonah's face was tense, eyes narrow. "Hey, Ethan," he said, stepping inside without waiting. "Got a minute?" Ethan forced a smile. "Yeah, sure. What's going on?" Jonah closed the door behind him. He glanced around, lowering his voice. "Strange things are happening. Someone broke into the lab last night, tore pages from the old science books. Dr. Hargrove is furious. He thinks it's connected to that crash." And Jonah's voice dropped even lower. "They found small footprints behind your shed this morning. You know anything about that?" Ethan felt cold all over. He shook his head, trying to keep calm. I haven't seen anything. Maybe just raccoons or something." Jonah studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "You've always been a terrible liar, Ethan. Look, if you know something, Now's the time to say it. The patrol is planning a full search tonight. If you're hiding anything, they'll find out. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He thought of Lyra, still hidden in the shed. He wanted to trust Jonah to tell him everything. But he remembered the colony's rules, the fear, the hatred for outsiders. No one would believe Lyra was just a scared girl, not a threat. "I wish I could help," Ethan said softly, "but I really don't know anything." Jonah stared at him, then finally nodded and left, his boots thudding on the wooden steps. Ethan rushed to the shed. Lyra was crouched in the corner, eyes wide. "People are coming," Ethan whispered. "We need to be ready." Lyra nodded, clutching her small pack of drawings and the torn book pages. That night, the colony was alive with searchlights and barking orders. Patrolmen moved in teams, sweeping the area. Ethan hid with Lyra in the deepest corner of the shed, barely breathing. Every noise felt like a threat. Footsteps passed right outside. Someone even tried the shed door, but the old lock held. After hours of tension, the search moved on. Ethan relaxed for a moment, but then he noticed something strange his back. Door was open a crack. He was sure he'd locked it suddenly. Strong hands grabbed him from behind. Jonah and two patrolmen dragged him into the yard, faces hard. "We have reason to believe you've been hiding the alien," Jonah said loudly for everyone to hear. Ethan struggled, but they held him tight. Inside the shed, Lyra watched from a crack in the boards, her hands shaking. She wanted to run too. Ethan, but fear kept her frozen. The colony leader, a stern woman named Mrs. Dorian, arrived, flanked by guards. "Ethan, do you deny breaking the law?" she asked, her voice cold. "You have always been a good citizen, but this is treason." Ethan looked around, his heart breaking. "She's just a child," he said softly. "She's scared and alone. She needs help, not prison." The leader shook her head. "You put us all in danger. We cannot take risks." She nodded to the guards. "Take him away. Search the house." Ethan was dragged away, fighting back tears. He caught one last glimpse of the shadand of Lyra's frightened face in the shadows. The patrol stormed into his home, tossing furniture and opening every door. They found the medical supplies and the strange drawings. But Lyra stayed hidden, holding her breath, listening to the chaos. Hours passed. The search ended without finding her, but the guards posted men outside, just in case, in a cold metal cell. Ethan sat alone, bruised and tired. He wondered if he'd ever see Lyra again. He hoped she had escaped. He wished he could tell her he was sorry. That night, while the colony slept, Lyra crept through the shadows. She wanted to run, to disappear forever. But when she reached the edge of the woods, she stopped. She remembered Ethan's kindness, his gentle hands fixing her wings, the food and warmth he shared. She could not leave him behind. With silent steps, Lyra turned back toward the colony, risking everything for the only human who had ever shown her trust. The great escape. The colony slept under a blanket of clouds, lights dim, guards yawning at their posts. But Lyra did not sleep. Hidden deep behind the tool shelves, her small heart raced with fear. She pressed her ear to the old wooden wall, listening for the guards outside. Their boots stomped back and forth, but sometimes their voices faded. And she knew they grew lazy in the darkness. Inside his cold cell, Ethan sat with his head in his hands. His wrists ached from the metal cuffs. Every now and then, a patrolman would stomp past, glaring through the bars. Ethan thought only of Lyra. Was she safe? Did she know he hadn't betrayed her? All he could do was hope. The sky outside the tiny cell window turned from gray to black as the hours crawled past. At midnight, a storm began. Thunder rattled the colony. Rain hit the rooftops in hard, endless waves. Most guards hurried inside to stay dry, leaving only to buy the shed. For Lyra, this was a chance. She remembered how Ethan had taught her to watch for patterns when the guards left. When the dogs slept, which floorboards creaked the loudest? Now she moved silently, clutching Ethan's old coat. The drawings and medicine hidden in its pockets, she slipped from the shed, ducking under the nearest fence. The rain masked her steps. A flash of lightning revealed the empty yard. Then, moving faster than she ever had before, Lyra headed straight for the detention building. Inside, Ethan heard a small tap at the barred window. At first, he thought it was just the rain. But then, another tap. He looked up and saw a pale face peering through the glass. Lyra. She pressed a finger to her lips, signaling him to be quiet. Ethan's cell was locked with an old keypad. He knew the guards changed the code every week. He mouthed the numbers. He remembered his mother's birthday. Lyra nodded, her clever fingers working the keys on the outer panel. The lock clicked, the door swinging open with a groan. He stepped out, stunned, and almost laughed with relief. "You're crazy," he whispered, eyes wide. "You shouldn't have come back for me." Lyra smiled a little, shaking her head. "You help me," she said softly. Her voice was getting better, her words clearer. "I help you." Together, they hurried into the storm. The rain made their footprints disappear. They moved past the sleeping patrol dogs, careful not to step on gravel. Lyra led Ethan to the edge of the woods where the fence had been damaged by the crash days before. She squeezed through, then pulled Ethan after her. The wire tore at his shirt but didn't slow him down. Thunder rolled as they reached the safety of the trees. Behind them, the first guard noticed the empty cell. "He's gone." A shout echoed through the colony, followed by more voices. Then, sirens. Searchlights swung through the darkness, hunting for any sign of escape. Ethan and Lyra ran deeper into the woods, branches whipping at their faces. The ground was slippery with mud, but they didn't stop. Soon, the angry voices faded behind them, replaced by the quiet of the storm. Only when they reached a narrow stream did Ethan finally sink to his knees. Breathless, "We have to keep moving," he said, wiping rain from his eyes. "They'll be coming." Lyra nodded. She opened Ethan's coat and pulled out a crumpled map, the old colony survey he'd used to teach her the land. She pointed to a cave marked near the edge of the valley. Ethan knew the place. It was far, dark, and dangerous, but it might be their only hope. They traveled all night, sometimes crawling, sometimes running, always listening for the distant sound of search parties. When Ethan's leg caught on a root and twisted, he nearly fell, but Lyra helped him up, putting his arm over her shoulders. She was small, but stronger than she looked. As dawn broke, they found the cave, half hidden by tangled vines. Inside, it was cold and smelled of wet stone, but at least it was safe. Ethan collapsed, shivering, as Lyra pulled the coat around him. For a long moment, they just listened to the rain. In the pale light, Ethan looked at Lyra and managed a weak smile. "You saved me," he whispered. Lyra touched his hand, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "You saved me first." Outside, the colony searched every path, every house, every tree, but they found nothing. The storm had washed away every clue. Inside the cave, Ethan and Lyra huddled close. Their bodies were tired, but their hope was stronger than ever. For the first time since the crash, Lyra closed her eyes and dreamed of flying again. But Ethan knew the danger wasn't over. Sooner or later, someone would find their trail. And if they wanted to survive, they would have to trust each other more than ever before. The sacrifice. The cave was cold and dark, but it kept Ethan and Lyra hidden from the searching patrols. For 2 days, they barely moved, eating small bits of bread and water from Ethan's emergency pack. Lyra's wounds were healing, but her wings still drooped. Each time she tried to stretch them, pain flashed across her face. Ethan did his best to help, using bandages and the medicine he had stolen. But he knew it wasn't enough. Every night, Ethan listened to the distant sounds of the colony drones buzzing overhead, patrols shouting in the woods, dogs barking. He kept a small fire burning low, careful to hide the smoke. When Lyra shivered, he gave her his jacket, ignoring the cold biting his own skin. One evening, as rain fell softly outside, Lyra sat by the fire, staring into the flames. She held the broken feathers of her wings in her hands. Ethan noticed tears in her eyes. He sat beside her, trying to offer comfort. "Your wings, they're not getting better, are they?" Ethan asked quietly. Lyra shook her head, voice trembling. "In my world, wings heal only with help. Special energy. From family." She hesitated, looking down. "No family here." Ethan felt a heavy sadness. He wished he could give her what she needed, but he was only human. Still, he refused to give up. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked. Lyra thought for a long time. She traced a pattern in the dust, drawing two figures, one with wings, one without. Then she pointed to herself, then to Ethan. "I need connection, life energy. Maybe from you." Ethan understood. Somehow, sharing his own strength might help her. He didn't know if it would work, but he trusted Lyra. "If it's the only way, I'll do it," he said firmly. Lyra nodded. She took his hand, her fingers cool and gentle. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. A soft glow started to build around her palms, spreading warmth through Ethan's arm and into his chest. At first, it was only a tingle, but soon Ethan felt a deep ache, as if something was leaving him. He gritted his teeth, holding on. The glow grew brighter, spreading to Lyra's wings. Slowly, the broken feathers began to mend, the wounds closing before his eyes. Lyra's breathing steadied, her face lighting up with hope. But Ethan grew weaker, his limbs heavy. He felt as if he was falling away from himself, the world spinning. His memories of flying soaring above the colony with his jet wings, feeling the wind on his face, faded into shadows. Lyra opened her eyes. Her wings fully healed now, shining in the firelight. She saw Ethan's pale face and realized the price he had paid. "Ethan, I'm sorry," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "You gave too much." Ethan smiled weakly, squeezing her hand. "It's okay. You needed it more. Besides, I think flying was never really about the wings." He closed his eyes, exhausted but safe. Lyra wrapped her wings around him, holding him close. For a long time they sat like that, the fire burning low, the storm fading outside. As dawn broke, Lyra gently shook Ethan awake. He opened his eyes, feeling strange lighter and heavier at the same time. He tried to stand, but stumbled, his legs weak. Lyra helped him up, her wings folding gently around his shoulders. You can fly again," Ethan said, smiling. Lyra nodded, but her face was full of worry. "But your energy is gone. You cannot use your wings anymore." Ethan touched the spot where his mechanical jet wings used to connect to his body. The connection was dead, now he could feel it. He would never soar above the clouds again, but he looked at Lyra, alive and strong, her eyes full of gratitude. He knew he had made the right choice. Suddenly, voices echoed outside the cave. Patrols had found their trail. Flashlights danced between the trees. Lyra pulled Ethan deeper into the shadows, her body tense and ready. "We have to leave," she whispered. "I will carry you." Ethan nodded, trusting her completely. He climbed onto her back, holding tight as Lyra spread her wings. With one powerful leap, they shot into the air, leaving the cave and the searchers far below. Ethan had never flown like this before, not as a pilot, but as cargo, trusting another with his life. Lyra's wings beat strong and sure, lifting them above the treetops. Into the morning sky below. The patrols watched in shock as a glowing winged figure soared away, a human boy clinging to her back. For the first time since the crash, Lyra laughed up. Sound full of hope and freedom. They didn't know where they would land or what would come next, but they knew, as long as they had each other, nothing could stop them. The heart remains for hours. Lyra's powerful wings carried them high over the misty forest. Below, the colony searchlights grew smaller and smaller, fading into the sea of trees. Ethan clung to her back, dizzy from the ride, but full of wonder. He had always dreamed of flying, but never like this, with trust, with hope, with someone who truly cared for him at sunrise. Lyra gently glided down into a hidden valley surrounded by green cliffs and glowing blue flowers. They landed softly, on thick moss. Ethan slid from her back, his legs still weak, but his heart feeling lighter than ever before. Lyra smiled at him, her wings folding behind her like a silver cloak. The world here was quiet, untouched by the colony's fear or suspicion. For the first time since the crash, Ethan felt safe. He lay back on the moss, looking up at the brightening sky. Lyra sat beside him, tucking her knees to her chest and dizzily, and watched the sun paint the world gold. Birds chirped in strange, sweet songs. For a while, neither spoke, they simply breathed in freedom. In the days that followed, Lyra explored the valley with Ethan. She showed him how to find sweet fruit and cool water hidden among the rocks. At night, she gathered soft leaves for bedding, and they told stories by a small fire, drawing pictures in the dirt. Lyra taught Ethan words from her language, and he told her about Earth and its blue skies. Ethan missed his wings sometimes. When he saw birds soaring overhead, a shadow crossed his face. But every time, Lyra would touch his hand and whisper, "You fly in other ways now." Her words warmed him more than the sun. They grew closer with each passing day. Ethan learned to read Lyra's quiet moods, to laugh at her soft jokes, to trust the way she listened. Lyra, in turn, learned to share her fears, her memories of a lost family, and the pain she had carried since the crash. One morning, Lyra flew high above the valley, spinning in loops just to feel the wind. Ethan watched from below, clapping and cheering. When she landed beside him, breathless and smiling, she pressed her forehead gently to his. "You gave up your wings for me," she said softly, "but you gave me more. You gave me hope." Ethan grinned. "And you gave me something too, Lyra. You gave me a reason to keep going, even when everything seemed lost." Their days in the valley became a new kind of life. Sometimes, at dusk, Ethan would sit on the rocks, telling Lyra stories about his old dreams. He spoke of wanting to be a hero, of feeling alone even among his own people. Now, with Lyra beside him, he realized that being a hero wasn't about flying the highest or breaking the rules. It was about saving someone when they needed it most, even if it cost you everything. One afternoon, as a warm breeze blew through the valley, Ethan heard a distant humming sound. He looked up and saw a drone circling far overhead, one of the colony's searchers. He tensed, worried that their peace would end. Lyra sat beside him, taking his hand in hers. "We are not alone anymore," she said quietly. "Let them come. I am not afraid with you. I am strong." The drone circled. Once, twice, then buzzed away, lost in the clouds. Ethan let out a long breath. Maybe, he thought, the world was changing after all. Later that evening, as the sky turned orange, Lyra sat close to Ethan by the fire. She wrapped her wings around them both, pulling him into her warmth. She looked into his eyes, her voice trembling, but strong. "Ethan, I want to stay with you," she said. "Not because I must, but because my heart is yours now. I choose you." Ethan felt tears sting his eyes, but he smiled. "I choose you too, Lyra. You're my family now." In the darkness, surrounded by the wild and the stars, they held each other close. No longer afraid, no longer alone. They had lost Muchithon his wings, Lyra her old life, but together they had found something greater. The next day, Lyra flew Ethan to the edge of the colony, just out of sight. Together, they watched as some people from the colony gathered, staring at the sky where the search drone had vanished. For a moment, Ethan thought about returning about, explaining everything, trying to make peace. But he knew, deep down, that the real peace was here, in the valley, in the trust they had built. As the sun rose, Lyra whispered, "Home is not a place. It's the heart you share." Ethan nodded, his arm around her shoulders. In a world full of fear and broken rules, they had made their own world a place where trust, hope, and love could grow. And in that hidden valley, under alien skies, their new life began together.